I had just the privilege and honor to hear you perform live just about a month ago.
Yes.
You are a comedian and a performer and a storyteller. And I don't know how long you've been wanting to do that, but it looks like you're doing it
Yes.
and you're making it happen, which is so cool to see. I love seeing artists and creatives have freaking
Yeah.
traction, you
I
know?
love that.
And I'm grateful that you took time out of your day to speak to our group of creatives to share a little bit of your journey and maybe some thoughts and tips that you have for them. But Learn More, thank you for your time and generosity. You're coming from Pittsburgh today, right?
Yes, that's it right there.
All right, give me the backstory,
Well,
man. So, little Learn More as a little kid growing up, he's like, I'm going to be a
well,
comedian. I'm going to travel around, make people laugh. Was that the
yes,
plan?
actually. So I grew up in a small village in Zimbabwe called Chimanimani. And I remember because I fell in love with comedy at a very young age. I think I was about 8 years old or something like that. My grandfather was, I remember this particular day, my grandfather was worried on where he's going to get money to pay for our school fees and buy us food and stuff like that. And then he was worried the whole day. I could hear him talking to my grandmother, just worrying. And then as soon as he turned on the TV, there was comedy, and then he started laughing. So I I fell in love with that. I was like to myself, I want to do that. I want to make people feel the same way. I want to give people an opportunity to laugh. You know what I mean? So from there, I just started watching comedy. I didn't understand what they were saying, but I just loved how it made people feel. You know what I mean? And then I've discovered Rowan Atkinson, the Mr. Bean character, because he uses his body to perform. And I just fell in love with that. So I started making that growing up, so
Because you're tall.
yeah, that's true. So then from there, I told my grandparents that I want to do comedy. And they're like, just finish high school and then you do it. So then as soon as I'm done with high school, I was straight on stage the next day.
No,
Yes.
really. Where did you find that
So,
stage?
but when I started doing comedy, there were like four comedians in the whole country. Like comedy was not a thing in Zimbabwe. Yeah, no, it
Really?
was not a thing. And nobody knew about stand-up comedy. So I went to the capital city, which is Harare. That's like hours away from our village, and this is my first time in a big city because I'm a village boy. I grew up in a village. So I went there to just try and, because I found it on Facebook. I found a comedy show called Simuka Comedy Night in Harare on Facebook. And then I approached them on Facebook. They're like, yeah, come through, do an open mic, 5 minutes. I asked my grandfather for money for bus fare. He gave me the money. He's like, go and do your thing. And I just went to Harare for the first time ever. And cut the long story short, I was booed off stage that night.
You were
Booed,
bored?
like,
Oh,
boo!
booed. No, you weren't. Why?
Boo!
What did you
No, it was
say?
terrible jokes. Like
These
I
weren't
was
good.
new
Okay.
because the thing is, as soon as I traveled from Chimanimani, that's my village. It's called Chimanimani. As soon as I traveled to my village, from my village to Harare, I'm an outsider. I'm different. So what's funny in my village is not funny in the city. So I didn't know that. I thought what was funny back home is funny here. So I just did my what I thought was funny. And these uptown people were like, what? No. And they just went, boo.
Did that crush you? Like your first time
Ye-
on stage?
yes. And a guy threw a chair on stage while I was performing. Yes. Yes. Like it was ridiculous. It was one of those,
I'm
like,
sorry.
it was really terrible. So then, yeah, it really crushed me. I remember going back home. It was a long bus ride. I didn't tell anybody. I was just thinking, like, did I make a mistake? But then I wasn't really good in school. Comedy was the only thing that I had. So these comedians that were around, they didn't know what they were up against because this is the only thing that I had. So I just started going back to the stage. Same stage, I was there every week. You know, just
That hour, 2 hour
yes,
drive
every
every
week I was
week
there for
for
five
5 minutes.
minutes. Sometimes three if it goes well. It never. I kept on dying on stage, bombing. Yeah, bombing on stage for like 2 years or so. until one day,
One day.
one
One day.
day, I did my joke, and one guy from the back was like, "Ha!" And I was like, "That's it. I got it. I am a comedian now." I was so happy. You have no idea. And then I got that one ha, made it into two ha's, and then three ha's, and then a whole crowd. And then I started learning how to become, how to write jokes, and discovering myself as a comedian. And then it just started growing from there. And then you keep learning, you meet people, and then boom, I learned how to be, how to be a comedian, how to be funny.
What a story, and there's so much
Of
still left
course.
to unpack. But let's sit with the part where you said, "I had nothing
No, yeah,
other
this
than
is the
this."
only thing that I had, even till today.
I want to know more about that because one could argue, well, learn more. You could have learned other things. You could have become a baker or, learned sales or blah, 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 blah. But for you to have the conviction in your heart that says, no, this is all that I have, how did you know that was all that
So
you
I
had?
remember this particular day, I just wrote a test, what you call them, like an end of year high school test, like mathematics, right? I just did a test, and I knew that I failed. I knew I failed, and I was never really good in school. So from when I was 8 years old, I made myself a promise that I was going to be an African comedian with a global fan base.
Ooh, let's
From
go.
there, from that test, after I wrote that test, I was sure. I was like, no, 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 this is the only thing that I'm gonna just give my 100% to as a
As
kid.
a
And I
kid.
just from there, I told my grandparents, and they knew when I was growing up that I was gonna be a comedian from at a very young age, and they prepared for that. Actually, yeah,
Wow. So they
they
encouraged it. They
encouraged it,
weren't
and
like,
also because I'm a grandson, so they were like, "Yeah, let's see, let's do an experiment. Let's just experiment and see what this one will do."
that's funny because it's
Yeah,
true.
that's,
Because it's true. You said this story of you getting that one
mm.
ha. Tell me, what did you learn with that one laugh that you weren't doing before that started helping frame how to tell jokes moving forward? What was
Punchlines.
that?
Set up punchline. As a comedian, you need to know these things. You need to, when you perform, a joke is in two forms: a setup and then a punchline. A setup is you hide the punchline somehow, and then a reveal that's the punchline. So I had one joke that I wrote like that. It was such a misdirect that someone in the audience was startled, like, you know, and I was like, oh, I like that. Then I went back to all my jokes, started writing them in that format. And that format really made me a comedian I am today because it had this rhythmic, like, people would know that a punchline is coming, but they didn't know how it's coming. So it was quick, set up, punchline, set up, punchline, set up, punchline. People got into this rhythm, and it really made me different from the other comedians. So it's all about just discovering your style and who you are in anything that you do, really. And you do that by trial and error, until you get it.
That's the grit stuff that we don't really realize enough because we see somebody like you popping up online and getting awards and getting to do all this stuff. And you just said, no, you got some cool, badass stuff that you've been able to do. Side note, everything's linked in the show notes. Check out his website. Um, but for you to drive back or ride on that bus back and forth just for that one laugh and the time that took, what happened next from there? Because eventually you got off the
I
open
got off
mic.
open mic. I got my first paid performance from the same club. After like a few years. Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah.
few years. Y'all
A
hear
few
that? A
years.
few
There's an
years.
article
Yeah.
online. I think it's still there, where oh man, that night was beautiful. It was like everything that I was preparing for just came together like this. Like the audience was in tune. I was everything was just aligned. The material, everything. It was crazy. Like people stood up. There's an article online where they will say, they spoke about me the whole thing. That was my first ever, performance that really did it. So from there, I started being recognized as one of the comedians in Zimbabwe. Started getting paid gigs. I started providing for my grandparents a little bit. Oh yeah, you have no idea. It felt so good. I started showing people that I can actually get paid doing this. But then I wasn't. Remember that dream that I had? African comedian with a global fan base. I wasn't gonna do that just being in Zimbabwe. I wanted to travel. That was one of my dreams too. I wanted to travel around the world. So the only place I had to go that had an international influence was South Africa. So I went to South Africa. I told my grandfather, I was like, Grandpa, I need to go to South Africa. He's like, go and do it. So remember that trip that I took from my village to Harare? It felt the same way. I was from Zimbabwe. Now that's the rural area. You go to South Africa, it's a little bit more advanced. I was an outsider instantly. But the difference is I knew how this feeling was, felt like I had prepared myself, so it was like starting from scratch. Yeah, and
Yeah,
exactly. I went
a
on
new
stage, my
game.
first ever show. Nobody laughed because what was funny in Zimbabwe is not funny in South Africa.
So you're becoming like a student of
Yes.
culture
So
too.
yeah, different culture,
Yeah.
different languages, just it's totally different. You know, I'm coming from Zimbabwe where things are bad, like but around that time, so much inflation in Zimbabwe, and then you go to South Africa, the lifestyle is totally different, the culture is totally different. So it was really tough. A few years again working in South Africa. I skipped a lot, but I remember at some point in South Africa, after a show, amazing show. I remember I killed that night and not having transport to go back home and sleeping in the street, waiting for
Hmm.
until it's like, the sun comes out so that I can get public transport to go back home. Getting rained on the whole night, just saying, you know what, I'll keep doing it
Yeah.
no matter what. I'll just keep performing. One day.
It takes a lot of
Yes, it's a lot
faith.
of faith, and I had a great support system. Back home, I had people that really wanted to see me become big and stuff like that. So yeah, I was blessed in that way, honestly.
Before we hear about what
Mm.
happens next, I got you
Oh
in
yeah,
Pittsburgh now, because now you ended up over in Pittsburgh. I think this is a really good point that you made. I don't know if it was intentional, but you made it where you were talking about you got yourself into one normal, like a new bubble in Zimbabwe in this stage. And then you outgrew that after a time and it was time to go to South Africa. So my question to you is, I think
yeah,
sometimes I get comfortable in my little
yeah.
bubble, in my little routine, and I'm not growing and pushing myself. So when do you know it's time for you to switch up, get into a bigger
Mm. When it
pool
when it
and
becomes
relearn the process
comfortable,
again?
like when you're like, oh, I like this, I'm good in this.
Yeah.
You need to go like, okay, let me try something new. Let me challenge myself. So remember my trip from Zimbabwe to South Africa, right? The same thing happened again. I traveled from Africa to America. What was fun in Africa is not fun in America. It keeps repeating itself. So for me, it's as soon as I'm comfortable, as soon as I'm like, okay, I've got it. You know, I need to learn something new. I need to be in a different environment. I need to start traveling to a different place or learning different things. So whenever it feels comfortable, or whenever you don't feel nerves. For me personally, it's the nerves. You know, yeah, like so whenever I'm about to perform, I get so nervous. Like I shake like this. And it's a good thing because it means that you really care and you really want this
Mm.
to go well. You know what I mean? But when I'm not nervous, when I just feel like, nah, I'm good, that's when I should get worried. Right there. because you always need to challenge yourself. You always need to be on the edge, and that's it right there.
How do you challenge yourself? I mean, obviously getting on different stages you've never been on before, I'm sure, maybe bigger audiences. Are there maybe crafty, creative ways with your material that you try to
also
push yourself?
that also, and it's a lot of things really. It's learning different things, trying to make something that is very personal to you funny. Like I had a
Ooh, personal.
exactly.
That's
Yes,
tricky.
because for me, this
That's
is
hard.
therapy. Remember, you're seeing a group of therapists. To me, this is therapy for me. I remember at some point I was trying to figure out, or to just talk about me growing up and being raised by my grandparents and my father not wanting to have anything to do with me, and how I had to process that through comedy. You know what I mean? So that's, for me, I always challenge myself to take a topic that is not funny really and try and make it funny, or learn something new, or just, perform in a crowd that don't really like you. Like I remember in South Africa with a friend of mine, another comedian. We used to go to a show where we know we're gonna die on stage. We knew for a fact that this is going to happen, but we keep going to that show because it's a challenge. You need to
Okay.
constantly challenge yourself always, and then you become better.
How do you get your heart emotions out of that? Because here's the deal: you just said you're putting material in about your dad. I mean, that's
Of course.
some tough shit, and like you're putting, and no matter what your art or your work is, like you're putting it out in the world. And you're like, here, folks. Here's my soul.
Yes.
Crush me, and not getting it personal, and really like. Any tips and mindset tricks around that? Because I know all creatives deal with that, because the rejection
of course, it
sucks.
sucks. And comedy is worse because you are expecting people. You're expecting a very, very like specific reaction from the audience right there, like right now, and that's crushing when that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? So it's very tough for a comedian, but you don't hide. Just don't hide. That those emotions that you have, that's where the gold is, right there. Don't just go and face them. Face it, talk about it, say it out loud. If you want to cry, cry. You know what I mean? That's right there. Express yourself. Don't hide. Yeah.
Come on, preaching. So where did you go from there? So you started South Africa. It was hard again. I'm sure you started dominating those stages and started getting
started
comfortable.
doing around Africa. At some point, I knew exactly what I was finding in South Africa. It was easy to kill, right? And I was like, okay. I told my mother. My mother, she's based in South Africa. I was like, Mom, I want more. I want something new. And then she gave me an idea. She's like, why don't you try another country? And then you go to another country. And I was like, I'm going to do that. So I started traveling around Africa doing shows. So I performed in Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, Zambia, Botswana, all over Africa, just learning different languages. And that really helped me like shape my style as a comedian, because I was absorbing these cultures and just different kind of humors and different languages, and you know what I mean? So that really shaped me, and yeah.
And tell me if I'm wrong on this. I know sometimes I'm sitting by my phone waiting on my phone to ring for an opportunity, but what I heard you just say, and maybe I'm reading into this, you tell me what the truth was that you were making some opportunities for you, because to get those gigs, you were probably on the phone, on the email, the DMs.
My first show in Uganda, I booked a one-way flight because I didn't have money to book a return flight. As soon as I arrived there, I had $1 in my pocket. I'm not even over exaggerating, like $1 in Uganda. But I had made connections, through Facebook. There's this comedian who actually became my best friend after that. His name is Akao Jumbo. He was like, come through to Uganda, I'll host you. You stay at my place. You just eat what I eat, and then you do the comedy shows around here. I went there. I was, staying at his place, crashing at his couch, performing in some of these comedy shows that they host in little restaurants. And then I went to Kenya again. Kenya, I did the same thing. I went to my friend's place. I was sleeping on the floor at his place, and just making those connections, making relationships with people, just becoming friends with everybody, just being present. You know what I mean? And then my second trip was way easier because people knew me now. I didn't pay anything. I didn't book my flights. They just invited me and booked my flights and my accommodation everywhere because they knew me now. So those connections, as an artist, as a creative, you always have to make good connections. So what I normally do is I don't hand out my business card to people. If you do that, it disconnects you. You become one of those people that, exactly. You need to create a genuine connection with people. You know what I mean? You really need to be present, around people. And then that's when, you create that working relationship with them. So yeah, travel around. Yeah.
You're just, I mean, I don't know if you're realizing you're dropping gold, but you're dropping so much gold here that's really tactical. No, for real, because what you're talking about right now, because this is an intention that you set where you're like, I'm going to make friends with people. I'm going to be friendly. I'm going to meet them where they're at. That's a skill set that we can learn and we can develop. Tell me, before we move on to the next stage of your journey, what did you learn about dealing with people and decision makers through all that experience?
Yeah,
Any high level
definitely.
takeaways
So
there?
you always need to know your goal. You need to know it like the back of your hand, like right now. You need to know it like specifically. Like when somebody asks you what's your dream, you need to it needs to be in you all the time. You always need to repeat it. You see this picture right here at the back.
Come on.
That's
Yes,
a
sir.
Tonight Show stage. I know that I'm going to perform here one day. And I always say it to myself. So
Yes,
you
you
always
are.
need to know. So when you know exactly what you want to be and who you want to be and where you want to go, you know exactly the kind of people that you need to associate with, not just anybody. You need to. So when you know your dream, you know your people. You know the people that
You know your
exactly.
dream, you know your people.
You know exactly who you should keep around in your life. Don't just keep anybody in your life. It's good to disconnect from other people and mentors. You need to have mentors. Nobody's ever, you can never be great without guidance. And it's okay to outgrow a mentor. It's okay. You can outgrow a mentor and move on to the next one. It's fine. You know what I mean? You're supposed to actually. So I've had mentors in my life. I've surrounded myself with friends, that really want to see me grow in the same industry. Like that friend of mine, Akao Jumbo from Uganda, he became my best friend because my dream and his dream aligns. We always help each other. It's a back and forth relationship. I've met amazing people that that really helped me become who I am today. So yeah.
Your dream to be a comedian
What?
slash motivational speaker, because this is so good. No, this is really, really good. Okay, so we're traveling around Africa. We're collaborating with people. We're
Now
building
wait,
our network. We're getting
wait a
stronger. We're
minute.
starting to get invited
Yes,
places. You're
wait a
getting this
minute. So,
traction. What
so
happens
I'm
then?
traveling, right? I'm
Okay.
creating those relationships. I'm
Okay.
becoming friends with people, right? Everybody. You're just a good person to work with, right? So now what happened is there's this awards show. It's the biggest comedy awards show in Africa. It's called the Comics Choice Awards. Comedians vote for you. So all those connections I was making, making friends, just working with people nicely, just being a genuine person. When it came time for them to vote for me, they just voted for me. I wasn't expecting it, and I became uh, like the 2019 Pan African Comedian of the Year. That's the biggest comedy award in Africa. I won it against famous comedians in Africa, like rich, famous comedians. And it was
How did that
unreal.
feel?
It was just, I went to Shimani Mani, my grandparents, with the award. And I was like, Grandpa, this is yours. Because he's the one that really made me become who I am today. So yeah, it was crazy.
What a story. Tell me one thing your grandfather specifically taught you
A
that you
lot,
carried with you this whole time.
actually, a lot. If I start talking about it today, it'll be an hour interview. But one thing that really stuck with me is enjoy the journey. You said it in our language. Yeah.
That's hard. That's hard as an
You say it
ambitious
in our
person, though.
language, Shona. You said you need to enjoy the journey now. Not like right now. You see this process that right now, let's enjoy it because it goes like this. And then you'll be like, oh, why didn't I enjoy that? And take care of yourself, your health. Just take care of yourself. Like you need to always, eat right, exercise, all of those things. He didn't say it specifically, but he meant it like that. That's what stuck with me.
Awesome.
Oh yeah,
Man.
so
What
from
happened from there?
there, I started doing a lot of shows in Africa, and I got comfortable again. I was like, what do I need to do? I have always wanted to be an African comedian with a global fan base. And what is more global? Which country is more global? America. So now I'm here. Now I'm in this country. What is funny in Africa is not funny in America. So I remember my first show in America. It was terrible. So I was comfortable. Nah, to
Really?
me,
Was
to
it
me
really
it was
terrible, or
terrible.
were you
Okay,
just thinking it
but to
was
the audience, they're
terrible?
like, "Oh, that was
Okay.
funny," but to me, I was
Okay.
like, "No," So the thing is, yeah. So the thing is, it was so tough because when I was performing in Africa, I became comfortable and I knew exactly what the topic area and the dynamic of people. When I come to America, I know nothing. The first time performing here, I felt like that first night when I got booed back home, and I just channeled the same energy, and I was like, "Woo, I'm starting over again. Let's do this, baby." And then I just started working from scratch again. So all the material that I had, threw it in the bin, starting over again. Oh, that's like a year
How long
ago.
ago was that?
And then,
A
oh yeah,
year. What have you learned
I've
since then?
learned that everybody's different. Like in terms of I'm different, right? Because of where I come from, because of everybody's just different.
Yeah.
If you're really
Yep.
honest,
Yep.
you instantly become different than anybody else. You know what I mean? Yeah, you just be
If you're really
honest because
honest.
nobody's like you. So I used to have a stage name when I was back home, right? Yeah, this is one of the things that I had to go through when I was in America. I used to have a stage name. If you Google it, you'll find it. I'm sure you found it. And
I'm like over here, like
I
on
had a
Google.
stage name. I came to America. I was like, no, this is not me. This stage name is not me. My name is Learnmore. That's my real name. That's a real person. People would actually want to know me more. Like everybody wants to know more about me. So I started talking more about my village, more about my culture when I perform and talking about that, and also just looking at America with a village boy point of view. Yeah.
Ooh. Looking at America with a village boy point of view. You know what's been
Mm.
I've noticed when I started getting into the creative space, everybody's
Yes.
like, you need to have a point of
Oh,
view.
yes.
A point
You
of view. And I'm
that's
like, oh
true.
God.
No, but here's the
It,
thing they don't tell you though. Here's the thing they don't tell you.
it's
They say you need to have
go
a point
ahead.
of view. So what people start doing is they start looking for a point of view. No, you don't. You don't look for a point of view. You know
What do you
yourself
do?
first. Find you. Find you. Then the point of view will be made. So when I'm reading a newspaper, right? I'm like, what do I feel about this? I've asked me, because I know myself, what I feel about this. Then what you feel about that, that's your point of view. Right there.
Damn. Well, I want to honor the time I asked you for. I got, before we wrap up, your journey from here. I want to hear a little bit more about
Yeah.
kind of on the ground what you're working on, but also to any advice you have for a group of ambitious creative folks. They're not all comedians. There's storytellers and actors and business owners. They're all, the through line with all of it is that they felt like you at the beginning, where you said, I have no other choice.
Yes,
That's
everybody.
our folks, right? Maybe they're a few steps behind you, right? And maybe not seeing that kind of traction that you've seen over past several years. Did y'all hear how many years it took?
For me, it
Did
was
y'all
like, yeah,
hear how many years
I've been
it
doing
took?
comedy for 11, 12 years now. Yeah. So actually, I'm just getting
And you're just
started.
getting
Actually,
started.
that's actually that was actually my
Yeah.
point. So yes,
Sorry, I
you
took it from
snatched
you.
it.
Swooped in
What?
there. That's
No,
it.
what are
Goodbye,
we
y'all.
doing here now? So yeah, so it's you need to be patient, really, with this thing, and sometimes when you're creative, sometimes you doubt yourself. Sometimes you're constantly like saying, "Oh, am I even good enough?" And let me tell you something. That's good. That's good. You're thinking like that. If you're confident, if you say, "Oh, I'm the best," you're actually not. You need to always go like,
Preach.
I am not good enough. Whenever you watch your videos or whatever you do, you need to constantly critique yourself to say, I'm not good enough. But you are, by the way. But just keep working.
Yeah.
Just keep consistency, always, every day. Don't just become an artist. Don't just be. Just treat it as a lifestyle. Really, it's a lifestyle. It's who you are. You breathe it, live whatever you do. Comedy is a lifestyle for me. It's not a job. And when you do that, it's not work. It's more of just I live comedy every day. Yeah.
Amen. 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 I got a final question for you, but let's wrap it up with,
Oh
I
yeah,
believe you
yeah, I
have a
do.
GoFundMe here
Yes.
for some kind of special, some a little special. So do you share about that? And then anything
Oh
else that
yeah,
you want
so yeah,
to
I do have a
direct our
GoFundMe.
listeners to?
I'm raising funds to get my green card, my special alien green card. Yeah, yeah. So actually, they
Let's
approved
go.
it. So
That's
now I
awesome.
just need to raise a little bit more to pay the lawyers. It's so expensive, so that I'm able to work in America and get paid.
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now. So I'm able to do TV. The Tonight Show. That's all I need. That's what's standing. You
Yes.
know. So yeah, I don't know if there's a link, whatever. And yeah, and also I'm working on
Yep.
my special. Maybe hopefully one day it's gonna be on Netflix. I don't know, on HBO. It's called Far from the Village.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be talking
Oh,
about
let's go.
just my culture and also America with the village boy point of view.
Be kind to us. Be kind to
Mm.
us. I know it's a messy country.
So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Cool, cool. All that will
Mm.
be linked up in the show notes along with the social platforms so you can see this man in action and what he brings to the table.
Thank
It's
you so
incredible and I
much.
love your
Yeah,
stage presence.
I
Like
remember the first time we met.
you're
Yeah.
so funny. You're yeah. It was God, I was so tired that night. It
Yes.
was like
Yes.
12:30. I'm like,
Mm.
very last question. There's this quote on my wall.
Mm.
It's from this artist named James Victoria, and he
Mm.
said the things that made you
Mm.
weird as a
Of
kid
course. Yes.
make you great today.
Oh my
So what was
God.
really weird about you? I'm not talking like odd. I'm not talking about kind of quirky. I'm talking weird about you back then that you know makes you great
Oh
today.
my God. That's a very deep question, to be honest. What made me
I
weird
know.
back
That's why I put
then
it
that
in.
made me cool
It's a good
now?
one.
Something like that, right? I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
definitely okay. Yes. Remember, so I wasn't good at like learning a traditional way. You know what I mean? Like Like when somebody, when I in school, when the teacher goes like, "This is how you do it," for me, this is gibberish. I don't see anything, right? But I learned how to learn by myself. So I just learned how to learn. So I take the same principle and I put it in everything that I do. I just go like, oh, how can I learn this in my own way? And I just learn. Yeah.
Learning in your own way. What's your own way? Real quick, just tell me, like, how did
So, okay,
you
perfect
learn how to
example.
learn?
So English, right? English that I'm speaking right now. I didn't learn how to speak this
Okay.
English in school. I learned how to speak this English from watching TV, really. You know what I mean? So for me, it's more of understanding patterns. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I quickly understand patterns and how things work together, right? So I just
Yeah.
exactly. So I took that
Context.
and put it in how to learn English languages, different languages, and even comedy itself. So I just take these patterns, I'm like, oh, I recognize it, and then I just put it together, and I'm like, oh, that's it. That's how it fits together. So that's how I actually.
That's how you built your whole career. This whole
Exactly,
story
right
you
there.
just told me.
Got it.
Yeah. Thank
No, it's
you
all
for
good.
your generosity, for coming on the show, for dropping so much knowledge. I just cannot wait to see where life takes you. And
Thank you so much. This was
I
so much
believe you.
fun.
You're
I
going to be standing on
appreciate
that stage.
you.